Hey man, let me say something that might just change how you see attraction forever. Women are not drawn to your words, they're drawn to your presence, not the sentences you craft or the lines you rehearse, but the energy you give off the second you walk into a room. That silent command, that grounded calm, that subtle intensity behind your eyes, that tells her, this man doesn't need to talk, this man doesn't need to perform, he is. That's the masculine secret. Real attraction doesn't start with what you say, it starts with who you are before your mouth even opens. And the moment you understand that, you stop chasing validation and start pulling gravity. We've been fed lies, brother. We were told women want compliments, romance, witty banter, and while those things have their place, none of them matter if your energy doesn't hit. If your frame is weak, if your presence is scattered, if your eyes are pleading instead of piercing, she will feel it. And it doesn't matter what you say, she won't respond, because her attraction is not intellectual, it's instinctual, it's primitive. Her body reacts to something deeper than charm, it reacts to masculine presence. And that presence, it doesn't come from words, it comes from silence, from posture, from eye contact, from stillness. That's your weapon, that's the secret, that's what she feels before you say a single thing. Think about this, a lion doesn't roar to prove he's the king. He just exists, calm, confident, unbothered. He knows his power, and every animal around him does too, because his energy radiates dominance. That's what women feel when they're around a truly grounded man. They sense something ancient, something primal, something that doesn't need to impress, because it already knows its value. And when a woman feels that, she reacts without even knowing why. Her heart races, her thoughts spin, she starts wondering, who is he? Not because you said anything, but because your silence was louder than other men's noise. But here's the truth, most guys miss masculine presence is earned. You don't fake it, you don't copy it, you become it. Through pain, through discipline, through mastery of your emotions. A man who panics when she pulls away, no presence. A man who over-explains when she's moody, no presence. A man who can sit in silence, hold eye contact, and not flinch when tested. That man has presence, that man turns her on without trying. Because he communicates something deeper than words. He communicates certainty. And that certainty, that's what separates you from the rest. Let's be brutally honest. Most guys overtalk. They explain, they justify, they try to impress with intelligence, humor, kindness. But what they're really doing is compensating for a lack of internal strength, and women feel it instantly. It's like watching a man trying to swim upstream, exhausting himself just to stay afloat. Meanwhile, the grounded man sits back, says little, and watches the world orbit around him. Why? Because he's not performing, he's not seeking, he's being. And that being energy is rare. Women chase that, because in a world full of anxious men screaming for attention, the man who is silent becomes magnetic. And here's what you'll realize, once you master this secret, your words become more powerful when you use them less. A compliment means more when it's rare. A glance means more when it's steady. A smile means more when it's not trying to gain approval. That's the paradox. The less you try to attract her, the more attractive you become. Because she doesn't feel pressure, she feels pull. And pull is everything. It's psychological, it's emotional, it bypasses logic, and hits her at the level of desire. That's what happens when you walk in masculine stillness. She doesn't fall for what you say, she falls for what you are. You ever walk past a guy and feel his energy hit you like a wall? Not because he was loud, not because he was big, but because there was something solid about him, something that couldn't be moved. That's masculine presence. And it's built in silence, it's built in solitude, it's built in moments when you choose calm over chaos, discipline over emotion, focus over validation. And every time you do that, you stack energy, you build gravity, you stop being a man women look at, and start being a man women feel. Here's a truth, women will never admit, but they crave a man who can contain them, not control them, contain them, hold their emotion without drowning in it, sit through their chaos without reacting. That's why your stillness is so attractive, because she knows, consciously or unconsciously, that you're strong enough to handle her. And most men aren't. Most men fold at the first sign of drama. Most men try to fix, explain, solve. But the rare man, he just listens, breathes, waits. And that patience, that command, that unshakable vibe, that's what makes her melt. You need to understand that silence isn't weakness, it's power, it's control. It's the ultimate flex in a world obsessed with noise. When you can sit across from a beautiful woman, say nothing, and let her fill the silence, you've already won, because she's not used to that. She's used to men scrambling, talking, chasing. But now, she's the one who's nervous. She's the one who's trying to prove herself. She's the one thinking, why isn't he reacting? Why isn't he validating me? And that reversal, that's where attraction lives. That's the silent spark that sets her curiosity and her desire on fire. Masculine presence doesn't beg, it doesn't persuade, it doesn't perform, it simply is. And that is Nis. That grounded, unapologetic existence is what makes women obsess, because it's rare, because it's real, because it's rooted. So if you want to attract women without saying a word, forget the lines, forget the scripts, forget the games, start building your inner stillness, start controlling your breath, start watching your reactions, start choosing silence over need, and you'll see it in their eyes. The shift, the spark, the surrender. Not because you said something perfect, but because you became someone powerful. Most men think attraction starts in the eyes, but it actually begins in the nervous system. A woman doesn't fall for how you look. She falls for how she feels around you. And if your energy is anxious, reactive, needy, even if you're smiling, even if you're saying the right things, her body will tighten, her interest will fade. But if your energy is calm, grounded, unshaken by her beauty or her attitude, she'll feel it in her stomach before she even knows why. Because that feeling tells her she's in the presence of something rare, something dangerous but safe, something masculine but warm. And that contradiction, that's what makes her curious. That's what makes her obsessed. That's what makes her want more. Here's the truth about feminine energy. It's chaotic. Not in a bad way, but in a fluid way. Feminine energy flows, feels, reacts, and it craves something to anchor it. That's why the masculine energy she craves isn't just confident, it's stable. It's the man who doesn't shift based on her mood swings. The man who doesn't mirror her storm. The man who sits in the fire of her emotions without trying to put it out. And when she finds that man, she surrenders. Not because he told her to, but because his presence told her she could. No words. No pressure. Just the silent safety of a man who doesn't lose himself in her feelings. You want to know the secret to that presence? It's not fake dominance, it's not arrogance, it's not acting like an alpha, it's self-control. The man who controls his breath in conflict, the man who controls his eyes in temptation, the man who controls his energy in chaos. That man is dangerous, not in a violent way, in a composed, calculated way. Women sense it, they feel it. It's in your timing, your stillness, your posture, your tone. It's in how you don't need to speak to hold her attention, because you're not seeking anything from her. You've already found everything inside yourself. That's why so many nice guys finish last, because their kindness isn't rooted in strength, it's rooted in lack. They compliment because they want approval. They listen because they want attention. They please because they want to be chosen. And women can feel that a mile away. It's not kindness, it's performance. And performance creates pressure. Pressure kills attraction. But the man who is kind because he chooses to be, not because he needs something back, that man radiates power. His validation is rare. His approval is sacred. His presence is addictive. And that's the man she remembers long after the others fade. You've probably seen it before, the guy who barely talks. But women lean in when he enters the room. They laugh harder, they touch him more, they seek his attention, not because he's flashy, but because his aura pulls them in. That aura is the result of thousands of private victories, moments where he didn't react, moments where he didn't fold, moments where he chose peace over panic. That's how it's built, that's how it's earned. And when he shows up, women don't even know why they feel drawn to him. It's not logical, it's visceral. And that's the deepest level of attraction there is. Masculine presence is not something you find in a book, it's something you forge in solitude. It's built in the gym when you train in silence. It's built in cold mornings when you get up with no applause. It's built in quiet heartbreaks when you choose not to chase. Every time you hold back from explaining yourself, every time you let your silence speak louder than your words, every time you choose discipline over indulgence, you're sharpening your edge. You're becoming the man who doesn't need to raise his voice to command attention, the man whose stillness screams power, and she can't help but listen. You don't attract women by proving your worth. You attract them by embodying it. When you walk like you belong, when you speak like you've already been chosen by life, when your eyes say, I don't need anything from you, but I'm open to everything, that's when she feels it. That calm intensity, that grounded mystery, that unspoken challenge. Most men try to convince women, but the man with presence, he lets her wonder. He gives her nothing to push against and everything to lean into. And the more silent you are, the more curious she becomes. One of the most powerful things a man can do is wait. Wait to speak, wait to react, wait to touch. That patience creates space. And in that space, women feel tension. Not the bad kind, the good kind, the kind that builds anticipation. That makes her heart beat faster. That makes her eyes search yours for answers you're not giving. And that mystery, that restraint, that discipline, it's intoxicating. Because every other man rushes, but you wait. Every other man talks, but you pause. Every other man pleads, but you observe. And that difference, that's what she craves, even if she doesn't understand it. If you've ever felt like you have to do more to win her over, stop. You're already doing too much. The secret isn't adding more noise, it's subtracting it. More silence, more stillness, more groundedness. Let her enter your world, not the other way around. Let her feel the contrast, because once she does, you'll see it happen right in front of you. The shift, the softness, the surrender, not because you impressed her, but because you affected her. Your energy touched her in a place no words could reach. And once a woman feels that, she doesn't forget it. So if you want to attract women without saying a word, stop focusing on being liked. Start focusing on being centered. Build your inner world. Build your habits. Build your frame. Become the man whose presence speaks volumes. The man who doesn't beg. The man who doesn't explain. The man who simply walks in, locks eyes, and feels like the answer. That's the masculine secret. That's the untouchable vibe. And once you own it, women come to you. Most men are taught to communicate through effort, but real masculine power communicates through essence. It's not about crafting the perfect sentence or reading her mind. It's about being so rooted in your value that every word you speak comes from a place of calm conviction, not desperation. When you walk into a room, your energy announces you before you even speak. That's why you don't need to constantly prove or perform. Your presence does the talking. And the more you internalize that, the more power you hold. Not just with women, but in every area of life. Let me break a myth for you. You don't need to be emotionally unavailable to be attractive, but you do need to be emotionally sovereign. That means you're in charge of your emotional world. You don't let her highs pull you up, or her lows drag you down. You don't spiral when she's distant. You don't chase when she tests. Instead, you hold, you observe, you wait. That patience tells her everything. It tells her you're not controlled by her mood swings. It tells her you're grounded in yourself. And that, brother, is irresistible. Here's the hidden game women play. They test your internal frame without even knowing it. They say something emotional to see if you react. They create a little drama to see if you chase. They pull away to see if you crumble. But the man with presence, he doesn't flinch. Not because he doesn't feel, but because he's trained himself to respond, not react. He's so grounded in his truth, so anchored in his energy, that no test can shake him. And when a woman sees that, she stops testing and starts submitting, because she knows she's finally found a man who doesn't bend. You ever notice how the most powerful men say the least? It's not because they're cold, it's because they understand the power of restraint. Every word has weight, every glance has impact, every silence is intentional, and that intentionality, that's what pulls her in. Because most men throw everything on the table, hoping to get a reaction. But the man with presence, he lets her wonder, he lets her reach, he lets her lean into his energy, and in doing so, he reverses the dynamic. She starts chasing, she starts proving, she starts asking, who is this man? The ultimate secret to masculine presence is alignment. When your actions match your values, when your walk matches your talk, when your outer world reflects your inner clarity, That alignment radiates something deeper than confidence. It radiates integrity, and integrity is the rarest form of attraction because it tells her you're real, you're solid, you're safe. Not because you told her you are, but because she can feel it in everything you do, even when you say nothing at all. A lot of men think presence means being stoic or robotic, but that's not it. Presence isn't about being emotionally numb, it's about being emotionally grounded. A man with presence feels everything, but he's not ruled by it. He's the storm's eye, not the storm itself. He lets the waves crash around him, but he stays still. And that stillness doesn't mean he's weak. It means he's strong enough to hold space for himself, for her, for the chaos of life. That's the kind of presence that doesn't just attract women, it heals them. She'll never say it outright, but what she really wants is a man she can lean into. Not someone to fix her problems, not someone to do her emotional work, but someone who can hold his own when she's unraveling. That's why emotional reactivity kills attraction, because the second you start spiraling with her, you stop being a man and start being a mirror. She doesn't want a mirror, she wants a mountain, something unmoving, unchanging, unshakable. And if you can be that, even when she's throwing lightning at you, she'll worship you in silence. Masculine presence doesn't mean dominating her, it means inviting her into calm, into focus, into peace. When you walk into her space and bring order to her chaos, without force, without manipulation, just by being, she senses it. Her body relaxes, her defenses lower, she stops trying to control, because now there's nothing to resist, just strength, just energy, just the calm pull of a man who doesn't need her, but wants her. And that distinction, that's everything. Presence isn't just physical, it's spiritual. It's how deeply rooted you are in your purpose, your values, your mission. The man with presence isn't swayed by beauty, seduced by drama, or distracted by noise. He moves with intention. He breathes with purpose. He chooses what he engages in and what he lets pass. And that control over attention, that's your greatest weapon, because women feel it. They notice when your focus isn't up for sale, and they crave to earn it. If you want to be the man who walks in silence and commands hearts, forget about being impressive. Focus on being impenetrable, not closed off, but unshakable. Be the man who doesn't flinch, who doesn't chase, who doesn't break frame for anyone. And when you live that truth long enough, it becomes your identity. And once that happens, attraction becomes effortless. Not because you're trying to be someone, but because you've become someone no woman can ignore. You'll notice something wild once you master your presence. Women start competing for your silence. They lean in, they talk more, they try harder, all because they want your stillness to break for them. That's the paradox of masculine energy. The less you give, the more they chase. Because in a world where most men are loud, needy, and emotionally exposed, the man who says little but stands tall, he's rare, he's sacred, he's the exception to everything they've known. And when she feels that, she'll bend her own rules to get a reaction from you, even if it's just a glance. There's a presence to a man who's been through hell and didn't lose his mind, who's been betrayed and didn't become bitter, who's felt lonely but didn't settle. That kind of man doesn't talk about his power, he radiates it. It's in the slowness of his walk, the depth of his gaze, the way he listens without reacting, because his peace isn't surface level, it's been earned, forged in suffering, and that's what makes it magnetic, because even if she doesn't understand what he's been through, she feels the weight of it in his energy. Stop thinking you need to tell her who you are. Show her with your silence, let her wonder, let her fill in the blanks, let her obsess over what you're thinking. Because every moment you stay composed while others fold, every time you don't over-explain or seek validation, you build mystery. And women crave mystery, not confusion, not games, but a real grounded mystery that makes her ask, what's his story? What makes him so calm? Why doesn't he need me the way others do? Those questions are the seeds of obsession. Presence is also about what you walk away from. It's in how quickly you remove yourself from drama, disrespect, and low energy. The man with presence doesn't tolerate what drains him. He doesn't argue with chaos. He doesn't plead with confusion. He simply leaves. And that boundary, that self-respect, that quiet, confident exit, it burns into a woman's memory because it tells her, I value my peace more than your approval. And that, my brother, is power. That's the secret she doesn't want you to know. Here's something most men never learn. It's not the loud, dominant alpha who gets the deepest respect. It's the man who can be silent in the face of disrespect, who can hold eye contact without saying a word, who doesn't need to raise his voice to assert his boundaries. That level of composure, it tells her that you don't fear loss, you don't chase love, you don't need external permission to stand your ground. And once she sees that, you'll never need to explain yourself again. Your silence becomes your authority. A woman's nature is designed to test, not maliciously, but instinctively. She needs to feel the strength of your frame before she can trust it. That's why she'll push, pull, question, withdraw, just to see if you remain unmoved. And when you do, when you pass those hidden tests without even knowing they happened, that's when she relaxes, that's when she melts, because now she knows this man isn't a boy in a man's body. This is someone she can finally feel safe with. You've probably heard women say, he just had this vibe about him. That's presence. It's invisible, but undeniable. And it's built by how you treat yourself when no one's watching. Do you keep your promises to yourself? Do you walk with discipline? Do you honor your standards? Every choice in private creates energy in public. And the man who lives with integrity and silence becomes a presence that women feel even before he speaks. That's why you never fake presence, you become it. Understand this clearly, your attention is currency, and the man with presence spends it wisely. He doesn't give it to women who haven't earned it. He doesn't throw it at beauty without substance. He doesn't let it be hijacked by drama. Instead, he directs it like a laser, focused, sharp, intentional. And women feel that. They feel when your attention is rare, and what's rare becomes valuable. What's valuable becomes desirable, and what's desirable becomes unforgettable. You want to make her obsessed? Stop chasing, stop convincing, stop proving, and start embodying. Embody the man who could walk away at any moment, not because he's afraid of love, but because he respects himself too much to stay where he's not valued. That's the energy she feels in her bones. That's what makes her heart race and her thoughts spiral, because the man who doesn't need her is the only one she wants. The longer you live in presence, the more you'll realize it's not just about women, it's about you. It's about being so locked into your mission, so clear in your mind, so anchored in your spirit, that nothing outside of you can shake your core. And once you build that, everything begins to chase you. Opportunities, respect, freedom, and yes, women. Not because you sought them, but because you became the man they never thought existed. You know you've mastered presence when you walk into a room and people adjust. The energy shifts, conversations pause, heads turn. But not because you're trying to be noticed, it's because your self-respect arrives before you do. That kind of energy doesn't need approval. It doesn't seek attention, it commands it. And women especially are tuned into this frequency. They don't just hear what you say, they feel who you are. And when you carry yourself like a man who doesn't need to convince anyone, she notices, she remembers, she rewrites her whole story in her head just to fit you into it. There's a silence that speaks louder than shouting. It's the kind of silence that comes from not reacting to disrespect, from letting her tantrum play out without engaging, from walking away instead of debating your worth. That silence, it's heavy, it's powerful. It creates space for her to reflect, because you didn't fill the air with words or excuses. And in that space, she starts to realize who the real prize was, not because you begged her to see it, but because you left the room before she even finished her sentence. Masculine presence is not about intimidation, it's about invitation. It invites her to rise, to soften, to trust. Not because you told her to, but because your energy gives her permission to stop performing. When a woman feels that level of masculine security, she can finally exhale, she can finally drop the act, and that's when you see her real self, the raw feminine core that's been waiting for someone strong enough to hold it. That's the gift of your presence. It doesn't demand, it allows. The man with true presence doesn't chase closure. He doesn't demand explanations. If a woman disrespects his standards or leaves his life, he lets her, not because he's cold, but because he trusts that what's meant for him stays, and what's not reveals itself by leaving. That level of surrender is not weakness, it's wisdom. It tells her that your identity isn't dependent on her approval. And ironically, that detachment pulls her in deeper, because she's never seen a man walk away so completely, so confidently, so silently. You want to be unforgettable? Then stop giving women the emotional upper hand. Stop making them your emotional compass. Your value isn't proven by how much you can feel for her. It's proven by how much you can feel without losing yourself. That's what builds trust. That's what creates long-term desire. A man who can hold his emotional center, regardless of what she's feeling, is a man who becomes her center. And once you're her center, she won't even understand why she's drawn to you. She'll just know she can't look away. One of the deepest truths about presence is that it's not about performance, it's about peace. Real masculine peace doesn't flinch, it doesn't overcorrect, it doesn't try to prove or persuade, it simply is. And women, especially in today's chaotic world, are starving for that kind of peace. Not a fake Zen performance, but real inner stillness that's been earned through battles, heartbreak, solitude, and self-mastery. When you carry that within you, you don't need to seduce her. Your peace does it for you. Let me tell you something. Few men will understand until it's too late. If she doesn't respect your silence, she'll never respect your words. If she doesn't value your detachment, she'll manipulate your involvement. That's why presence is the first test. If she doesn't respond to your presence with curiosity, effort, and grace, she's not ready for a real man. She's still chasing fireworks, not foundations. And you don't build kingdoms on chaos. You build them with women who recognize calm strength when they feel it. Every time you center your life around her emotions, you shrink. You lose edge. You lose pull. Why? Because she's not attracted to your emotional obedience. She's attracted to your emotional leadership. That means you're the thermostat, not the thermometer. You set the tone, you hold the vibe. And if she can't rise to meet you, you don't lower your frequency. You keep walking, keep building, keep leading. And trust me, she'll either level up or fade out. Presence is also about what you don't do. You don't overshare, you don't gossip, you don't explain your every move. You let your life speak. Your energy, your actions, your stillness, they tell the whole story. And women respect that more than any speech you could ever give. Because deep down, she doesn't trust words, she trusts patterns. And when your patterns show strength, consistency, and peace, she leans in even when she doesn't understand why. The more presence you carry, the less tolerance you'll have for performance-based love. You'll stop seeking women who only want you when you're doing something impressive. You'll crave the kind of connection that respects stillness, that thrives in silence, that doesn't need noise to feel secure. And here's the wild part. When you stop trying to impress her, you become the most impressive man she's ever met. Because you're no longer dancing for validation. You're walking in truth. And that kind of walk, it shakes something deep inside her. There's a quiet fire in a man who's tasted rejection and didn't let it define him, who's been overlooked and didn't shrink. That fire burns differently. It doesn't scream, it glows. It radiates from his posture, from his walk, from his decisions. And when a woman encounters that flame, she feels the heat without ever seeing the spark. That's the kind of energy you can't fake. It's not built in comfort, it's forged in solitude. It's the aura of a man who became someone when no one was clapping for him. If you want to be unforgettable, be the man who doesn't flinch. When she yells, you stay calm. When she withdraws, you stay steady. When she tests, you don't chase. That stability tells her something no words ever could. I am not here to win you. I am here to see you. And if what I see doesn't match what I value, I will leave in peace. That energy, that composure, it's more seductive than flowers, poems, or sweet talk, because it's rare. And what's rare becomes sacred in a world of boys pretending to be men. You'll know you've stepped into presence when your silence makes her nervous. Not because you're playing games, but because you've stopped over-explaining yourself. You're not available for emotional chaos. You're not explaining your worth. You're just there, solid, unmoved, watching. And that quiet watching, it triggers her deepest desire for approval and her deepest fear of rejection, because now you've flipped the frame. She's no longer the prize, you are. A woman can smell when your validation comes from fear, when your compliments are begging for attention, when your approval is a transaction, and when she senses that, she pulls away, not consciously, but energetically. because what she craves is authentic admiration, not approval from insecurity. She wants to feel chosen, not worshipped, and the man with presence knows this. He gives praise when it's earned, not when it's convenient, and that's what makes it feel real. Masculine energy is not about being cold, it's about being centered. A man who's centered doesn't get pulled into her emotional storms. He listens, he observes, he decides, not reactively, but intentionally. And when she feels that, when she sees a man who can love her without being consumed by her, she feels safe, she respects him, and most of all, she starts to trust him. Because finally, there's someone who won't break when she breaks. You don't attract high-quality women by impressing them. You attract them by inspiring them. And inspiration doesn't come from talking about your vision, it comes from living it. The man who's building something bigger than himself naturally draws people in. His mission is magnetic, his energy is directional, his life has gravity. And when a woman feels that, she'll orbit around you without even knowing why. Never forget, she's not testing your masculinity to destroy you. She's testing it to believe in you, to see if you're the one who can hold her chaos, to see if you crumble under pressure, to see if your confidence was real or just a mask. And every time you hold steady, every time you stay composed, every time you don't react emotionally to her emotionality, you pass, not just the test, but the initiation, into a level of connection that most men never reach. Presence isn't about being better than other men, it's about being better than who you used to be. It's about walking into every room with the unshakable knowing that you faced yourself, that you've done the inner work, that you've made peace with your pain. And because of that, you don't need to perform, you don't need to posture, you don't need to win, you're already enough. And that energy, it lands like thunder, quiet but undeniable. The man with presence doesn't overpromise, he doesn't future fake, he doesn't tell her what she wants to hear. He simply shows up consistently, intentionally, with clarity. And that reliability, it builds trust faster than any romantic gesture, because women have heard every line, every fantasy, every dream. But a man who shows up as he is, day after day, that's the dream she didn't know she was waiting for. Your presence is not something you earn from the world, it's something you reclaim from within. It's what you access when you stop seeking approval and start living in truth, when you stop performing and start embodying, when you stop chasing and start leading. And the moment you commit to that path, when you truly become the man who walks in silence but shakes the room, you'll notice something profound. The world and the women in it will never look at you the same again. You don't need to be a genius to be attractive, you just need to be grounded. And grounding comes from knowing yourself, not the version of yourself others told you to be, not the mask you wear at work, but the real you, the one who's been through fire and came out sharper. When you walk in that truth, your energy becomes unshakable. You don't react to small things, you don't seek approval, you move with calm purpose, and women feel that, because a man who's sure of himself doesn't need to prove himself, and that's irresistible. Presence is about the weight of your energy, not the volume of your voice. It's how you enter a room without announcing yourself, how you listen without interrupting, how you speak only when there's something real to say. Women are so used to noise that your silence becomes a mystery. And mystery is magnetic, because she wants to know more. Not because you sold yourself, but because you withheld the pitch. And in a world full of performers, your restraint is revolutionary. A woman doesn't become emotionally attached to the man who validates her every minute. She gets attached to the man who makes her question herself a little, the man who doesn't always respond immediately, the man whose time is clearly valuable, the man who rewards effort, not just beauty. That friction between desire and uncertainty is where emotional attachment begins. Not because you're being manipulative, but because you're not being too available. You value your energy, and so does she. There's something deeply arousing to women about a man who isn't fazed by their beauty. Not cold, not rude, but simply unmoved, because he's seen beauty before. He's experienced desire before, and now he looks beyond the surface. That kind of man flips the entire script. Suddenly she's not the one choosing, she's being evaluated. And if you've ever seen a confident woman shift into a more feminine, respectful mode in the presence of a composed man, it's because she felt that shift in power. Women fall for how you make them feel about themselves in your presence. not just emotionally, but spiritually. A man who has mastered his presence doesn't try to impress. He inspires. He reminds her of who she wants to be. He brings out her softness, her nurturing side, her dreams, not by talking about it, but by living it. And in a world where men either pander or pressure, you become the oasis she didn't know she needed. Let me be clear, presence doesn't mean passivity. It doesn't mean you let things slide. It means you know when to act and how. It's strategic patience. It's knowing that the loudest man isn't the strongest. It's the calm one who knows his next move and waits. Presence is power, not reaction. It's setting the tone. It's walking away when lines are crossed. It's choosing silence not out of fear, but out of certainty. Because a man with presence knows he doesn't need to win the moment. He owns the outcome. Women are emotional by nature. That's not a flaw, it's a design. But that design craves structure. It craves leadership. And when she finds a man who doesn't collapse under her emotions, but instead holds space without losing his center, everything changes. She stops fighting. She starts testing. She starts testing. She starts surrendering. Because your presence created the safety she was screaming for, but couldn't articulate. And that's when true connection begins. Not when she understands you, but when she feels safe enough to let go. The ultimate irony? You don't build presence by trying to attract women. You build it by detaching from needing them. When you stop viewing women as the reward and start viewing your mission, peace, and discipline as the reward, everything aligns. Your energy changes, your posture changes, your words carry more weight. And without realizing it, women start orbiting you, not because you asked them to, but because you became a gravitational force. Presence gives you the power to flip the script in every interaction. Instead of asking, "Does she like me?" you start asking, "Do I like her energy?" Instead of trying to win her over, you evaluate if she fits your standards. And that shift, that quiet reversal of power, it's what makes you unforgettable. Because women aren't used to being calmly evaluated. They're used to being pursued, complimented, idealized. But you see through it. You move with discernment, and that makes you dangerous in the most attractive way. Most men wait for women to choose them, but the man with presence chooses himself first. He doesn't need a relationship to feel whole. He doesn't need attention to feel alive. He's not chasing intimacy, he's curating it. And because he's selective, intentional, and rooted, when he finally does choose a woman, it means something. It carries weight, and she knows it. She feels honored, not because he gave her everything, but because he gave her what he never gives anyone else, access to his presence. There's a myth that confidence is about loudness, about dominance, about being the center of attention. But the man who truly understands presence knows it's the opposite. Confidence is quiet, it's in the stillness between your words. It's in the way you sit, the way you breathe, the way you hold tension without fidgeting. And when you do speak, your words carry more impact because they come from stillness, not from need. Women don't remember the man who talked the most. They remember the man whose silence said everything. Presence sharpens your standards. You stop tolerating flakiness. You stop overlooking red flags. You stop bending over backward to make her comfortable while betraying your own peace. And the more you enforce those standards, not with anger, but with calm certainty, the more magnetic you become. Because women aren't used to men who hold frame. They're used to men who fold. And when you don't fold, when you calmly say, "That doesn't work for me," you create a gravitational shift. You become a mirror to her chaos, and she either levels up or walks away. One of the most powerful expressions of presence is not explaining yourself. When a woman questions your intentions, your decisions, your standards, you don't go into defense mode. You don't justify. You don't debate. You respond with clarity or silence. Because a man with presence doesn't need to convince anyone. He lives by inner alignment, not external validation. And women feel that. They test for it. And when they find it, it's like they've finally met a wall they can't push over. Your presence should calm her nervous system. Not with sweet words, but with solid energy. When she's anxious, you don't mirror it, you ground it. When she's emotional, you don't escalate, you anchor. When she's spiraling, you don't chase, you wait. And that waiting, that calm posture, it rewires her. It gives her a felt experience of safety. Not because you fixed her emotions, but because you refused to join the storm. That's leadership, that's masculine containment, and it's rare. Men who chase rarely get what they want, because chasing is rooted in lack, in scarcity, in the illusion that if I don't act now, she'll leave. But presence flips that entirely. It's the refusal to chase, the decision to draw in, to let your life, your energy, your clarity do the attracting. And when she does show interest, you still don't rush, you evaluate, you observe, because your time is sacred. And that patience makes you powerful. It makes her lean in, because finally, someone who doesn't need her to feel important. Women are biologically wired to respond to signals of status and strength, but not just financial or physical strength, emotional strength, spiritual strength. The kind of man who's not shaken by her moods, the kind of man who doesn't take her reactivity personally, the kind of man who can stand firm while still being kind. That combination, it's rare, it's confusing, it's intoxicating. And when she feels it, she doesn't want to test you, she wants to belong to you. Presence is a boundary, it's a non-verbal message that says, you can come close, but only if you bring peace. That means no drama, no manipulation, no guilt tripping. And when you hold that line without needing to raise your voice or prove your point, you create an energetic filter. The wrong women disqualify themselves, the right ones rise to the occasion. And that's the point. Your presence should filter out chaos before it ever touches your life. A man with presence doesn't need to compete, not with other men, not with her past, not even with her attention span. He simply exists in a way that makes competition irrelevant, because he's not trying to be better, he's trying to be real. And in a world of flexing and fronting, realness hits different. It lands, it penetrates, and it lingers in her mind long after you've walked away. Because while others tried to impress her, you left her thinking. One of the most misunderstood aspects of masculine presence is playfulness. Too many men think presence means being stoic all the time. But true groundedness allows for play, because you're not afraid of losing frame. You can tease her, joke with her, laugh with her, without becoming reactive or needy. That contrast between calm and playful lights up something primal in her. It tells her, this man is safe, but exciting. And that's the emotional cocktail women crave. You become truly powerful with women when you realize they are not the destination. They are the companions on your journey. Your mission, your purpose, your peace, those are the destination. And when you stop making her your goal, you naturally start attracting women who want to join your path, not redirect it. That's the shift, that's the secret. And when you live that truth, you no longer chase, you lead, and everything worth having follows. There's a kind of man who doesn't flinch when a woman threatens to leave. He doesn't beg, he doesn't panic. He simply looks her in the eye and says, do what you need to do. That man isn't heartless, he's centered. And that energy, that unshakable calm in the face of emotional storms, it leaves a deeper impact than any romantic speech ever could. Because when a woman realizes she can't control your center, she starts to respect it. And in many cases, that respect turns into attachment. You don't attract high-value women with performance, you attract them with presence. That means you stop being the clown who entertains, the simp who compliments every move, the approval seeker always walking on eggshells. Instead, you become the standard. You embody the values, you lead by energy, not persuasion. And the irony is, the less you seek to win her over, the more she leans in. Because something in her knows, this man doesn't need me, and that's exactly what makes him desirable. Masculine presence is built in solitude. It's not something you gain by watching more dating advice or memorizing tricks. It's what happens when you face yourself, when you sit with your own darkness, when you stare down your fears and come out clean. That internal strength is what gives your energy weight. And when a woman encounters a man who has already conquered himself, she instinctively softens because she senses that you can now hold her chaos without losing your balance. A woman becomes obsessed with the man who makes her feel safe and uncertain at the same time. Safe in his energy, uncertain in his attention, safe in his presence, uncertain in his availability. And that duality, it keeps her emotionally engaged. But here's the key, it's not manipulation, it's standards. You're not withholding to punish, you're withholding because your time is sacred. And if she doesn't bring peace, presence, and respect to your world, she doesn't get access. Don't confuse being calm with being passive. Presence isn't about letting disrespect slide, it's about choosing when to respond and how. You don't yell, you don't plead. you enforce. You withdraw energy, you set boundaries with your actions, and when she sees that you don't need her affection to feel powerful, everything changes, because now you've entered a realm most men never reach. You've become the man she can't predict, the man she can't control, the man she wants to earn. There's something magnetic about a man who's indifferent to validation, not rude, not arrogant, just not hungry for approval. He doesn't rush to text back, he doesn't light up when she compliments him. He accepts praise the way he accepts criticism, calmly, evenly, unbothered. And that energy, it's foreign to most women, because it signals self-sufficiency, it signals wholeness. It says, I don't need you to like me for me to like me, and that kind of power, it draws women in like gravity. Presence reveals itself when you stop needing to be understood. You no longer seek to explain your every move, justify your standards, or decode your past. You simply live. And that silent alignment with your truth sends a louder message than any argument. Women feel that, they're drawn to it. Because while boys are still explaining why they're good enough, you're showing it by how you live, how you walk, how you react to nothing at all. A woman feels your presence most when you remove it. Not as a tactic, but as a response. When she crosses a line, you don't argue. You don't punish. You step back. You disappear into your world of peace. And in that silence, she feels the absence. She notices the void. And she realizes your presence wasn't just a vibe. It was the container for her chaos. It was the frame holding the dynamic together. And now that it's gone, she feels lost. Masculine energy at its core is about direction. You know where you're going, you know what you're building. You're not floating, you're moving. And that direction gives your life structure. It makes your decisions clean. It makes your posture firm. And when a woman encounters that energy, she doesn't want to lead anymore. She wants to follow. Because finally, she's found a man who isn't looking for permission. A man who moves with purpose. A man who invites her into something bigger than emotion. When your energy becomes a sanctuary, women stop playing games. They stop manipulating. They stop testing. Because they realize that your world doesn't run on their approval. It runs on principles. It runs on peace. It runs on clarity. And once she feels that structure, once she steps into a world where chaos isn't tolerated, she either adapts or exits. But either way, you win. Because presence doesn't beg, it selects, it filters, and it only allows in what builds, not what breaks. You don't have to be perfect, but you do have to be solid. Women aren't craving flawlessness, they're craving certainty. They're not testing your looks, your wealth, or your charm as much as they're testing your center. The place inside you that doesn't move when life gets messy. That inner core that doesn't crumble when she gets emotional. When you lead with that kind of grounded masculinity, she can't help but soften. Not because you forced her, but because your stability invited her vulnerability. And that's where connection becomes real. When you're deeply rooted in yourself, your silence becomes louder than anyone shouting. You walk into a room and you're not looking for attention, you are attention. Because your presence speaks a language women feel in their body, calm, dominant, selective. It's not arrogance, it's not coldness, it's command. The quiet kind that says, I don't need to prove anything, I'm already enough. And in a world of noise, that stillness becomes intoxicating. One of the most savage truths, a woman cannot attach to a man who is emotionally needy. If your identity depends on her affection, she will subconsciously pull away. Not because she's cruel, but because her feminine core is always testing for strength. She needs to feel that you'll be okay without her, that your world continues with or without her presence. The moment you anchor in that truth, you become her emotional rock. And if she's real, she'll stay. If not, you just dodged a bullet. Stop trying to be the perfect boyfriend. Be the real man, the man who tells the truth. The man who walks away when lines are crossed. The man who laughs when it's funny and stays silent when it's not. You don't need to craft clever texts, plan elaborate gestures, or overanalyze every interaction. What you need is to be undeniable through your energy, your purpose, your consistency. That's what sticks. That's what gets remembered. Here's the paradox. The more indifferent you are to the outcome, the more power you gain. Not fake indifference. Not forced detachment, but real, earned, soul-deep indifference. The kind that comes from knowing that no woman can complete you. because you've already completed yourself. And once she senses that, once she feels that you're not trying to impress, not needing her validation, her attraction multiplies, not because you played a game, but because you opted out of the game completely. A woman doesn't want to lead emotionally. She doesn't want to be the one holding the structure. She may say she wants to be in charge, but her heart is starving for a man who can guide, not control, but guide, who can show her how safe it feels to let go, but she'll never say it out loud. Instead, she'll test, she'll challenge, she'll push, and only the man who stays unmoved will pass, because the storm isn't meant to break you, it's meant to reveal you. Presence means you don't over-explain your truth. You say what you mean, you do what you said, and you let your life speak louder than your promises. Women are used to men who talk big and deliver small, but when your actions are louder than your intentions, she has no choice but to pay attention, because you've become rare. And in a sea of noise, your silence becomes unforgettable. She doesn't want you to worship her. She wants you to see her, not just her body, but her patterns, her reactions, her tendencies, and she wants to feel like you're strong enough to call it out without fear. That's why your strength must be mixed with clarity. You don't attack her, but you don't coddle her either. You simply stand firm, and in that firmness, she finds the reflection she never knew she needed. You win not by chasing, but by being chased, and you get chased by becoming a man of gravity, a man whose energy is built through pain, peace, and purpose, a man who doesn't try to seduce, but naturally attracts, because he is so aligned, so focused, so still, that women want to figure him out. And the truth is, there's nothing to figure out. You're just unbothered, you're just you. And that is the most magnetic thing of all. This is the masculine secret that instantly attracts women without saying a single word: presence. Grounded, calm, selective, indifferent to outcome presence. It's not in what you say, it's in what you don't say. It's not in how you move her, it's in how you don't move for her. You stay rooted, you stay calm, you stay firm. And when you do, you don't just attract her body, you attract her soul. Because finally, she's found a man who's real, a man who's rare, a man who doesn't need her, but chooses her. And that is everything.